In this video, we want to do a basic troubleshooting exercise for route redistribution, specifically mutual route redistribution. We're trying to mutually redistribute routes between OSPF and EIGRP, and it appears right now we're not having much success. Let's do a show IP route on R1, and we can tell that we haven't learned anything via EIGRP. If I go to R3 and do a show IP route, I haven't learned anything via OSPF. Let's go to the middle router, R2. That's the boundary router. That's where route redistribution should be configured. Does it know about all these routes? If I do a show IP route, yes, it's clearly running OSPF and EIGRP. We've learned routes from EIGRP. We've learned routes from OSPF. Let's take a look at the routing configuration, though. Let's do a show run pipe to, or actually I'll just jump down to the first instance of the word router, and we can see here's the EIGRP router configuration, and here it is for OSPF. Take a look at this if you would, and see if you can figure out why the redistribution is not working. You can see I've got a redistribute command for both routing processes. For EIGRP, I'm saying redistribute OSPF process ID 1, that is the correct process ID. And for OSPF, I'm saying redistribute EIGRP autonomous system 1, and that's the correct autonomous system. So since I've got these redistribute commands in place, why is this not working? You might want to pause the video and think about what we've discussed when it comes to redistributing these protocols. Did you notice that even though we're saying redistribute OSPF 1, at no point are we specifying a metric? Do you remember the default seed metric when we're redistributing into EIGRP? It's infinity. Those OSPF learned routes are going to seem to be unreachable from the perspective of EIGRP, and therefore they're not going to be advertised to any EIGRP speaking neighbors. And here, when we say redistribute EIGRP autonomous system 1, we did not give the subnets keyword, which means the only networks from EIGRP that we're going to be redistributing into OSPF are those networks that have their classful mask applied. And if you take a look at the topology, none of the networks in the EIGRP autonomous system are using their classful mask. They're all subnetted, and as a result, nothing is going to be redistributed into OSPF. Let's fix these two issues. Let's go into router EIGRP1, and we can set a default metric. We can say default -metric, and I'll say that my bandwidth is a T1 speed, 1.544 megabits per second. I'll say that my delay is 10, where the unit of measure is in tens of microseconds. I'll say that I am 100% reliable, I am minimally loaded, and I have a default MTU of 1500 bytes. Now let's fix OSPF. Let's say router OSPF 1, and we'll say redistribute EIGRP autonomous system 1, and let's give the subnets keyword. Now let's see if things are any better. Let's go to router R1, and we'll once again do a show IP route. This looks better. We are learning things from another autonomous system as evidenced by the E2 routes showing up here. And if we go to R3, have we learned anything from OSPF? Let's do a show IP route. We have. The EX is telling us this route exists outside. It's external to our EIGRP autonomous system. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to show you. Let's go to R1 for a moment. Remember that we said that when a route was being redistributed into OSPF, it would have a metric of 20 unless it was being redistributed from BGP, in which case it would have a metric of 1. Just wanted to show you that for these external routes, the metric is indeed 20. That's the default seed metric for OSPF, again, other than for BGP routes being redistributed into OSPF. In that case, it would be a 1. But here, EIGRP to OSPF, they're going to have a metric of 20 by default without us having to do anything. EIGRP, however, its seed metric was infinity, so we had to set the metric there. And that's a look at a basic route redistribution troubleshooting scenario. And I say it's basic because we only had one redistribution point. R2 was the only boundary router we had sitting between these autonomous systems. However, we might run into some additional troubleshooting challenges if we have multiple route redistribution points. If we have more than one boundary router, that's what we're going to take a look at in our next video.